August 11th, 7:15 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. This is a trade review for August 10th. I was hesitant to do August 10th just because most of my positions were swing positions and I didn't want to talk through prior to disclosure in general. No type of conspiracy theory behind it, just more I like to talk about what's actually happening and what has happened, right? And so I did end up profiting, one trade. Again, the others were swings where I made $300 on TNGX, and it was from a video lesson from a colleague trader who had a great insight to dilution, float being locked up, and versus what's actually traded with the float. And so TNGX, if we just take a look real quick, dilution tracker, I use it a lot for the short and the long side because it just gives even that much more depth to the trade in general, right? And I don't like to get too far into the weeds with the information, but nevertheless, this one here, there was great explanation behind it. So let me see. Give me 1 second. Let me sign in. So TNGX. So the float itself, market cap, another 700 million. The float is 66, but for the way that this is moving, that's not the case. And so institutional ownership very high as well. And so what was happening was that they lock up the float. There's some formulas that are needed to actually calculate that. I won't get too far into the weeds with that. But it gives you an insight of like what the float actually is, right? And so this was trading like an 18 million share float versus a 66 million float, and that's the reason why you have these volatile bar movements like here. So I don't trade any of this day. It has a second spike, which again, for it to fade the way that it did, you would much rather be short here. This is where they start to dump some of those shares, increase that float, but it's still a smaller float, and then they run it back up. And so you have these, these 5-minute candles that are just launching the stock from $5 to nearly $10, right? So you're talking about a $5 move, 100% move in 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 30 minutes, 7, 35 minutes. That's just crazy, right? But then it's just a slow fade down, and the slow fade down is the bars are much smaller. So again, this isn't my information. This is from the video lesson. Again, my colleague Dorian, who did a great job of this. And so, anyways, this conviction to trade it was literally watching this video, seeing it, and then applying my thesis and my information and just my process to it. And so going into the end of day, after hours, I actually take a position at 795, thinking, okay, that's the second leg move of this. How much could it possibly have moving forward? And then what happens? Lo and behold, you get the gap down, right? And so they try to quickly, I end up covering in this area, 732 near the bottom, 500 shares. And they end up taking this back up right at the beginning of the morning, but then dumping it again, and then trying to bring it back one more time, dumping it again. And if you notice, the bounce is getting smaller and smaller and smaller. So this is just them unlocking that float. And notice that the bars are that much smaller, so there's not that volatile movement of a smaller float happening. And then of course it just fades out, right? And so the point of it is that the video lessons that are made are the ones that you see from credible traders, and they're consistent with the information. Take heed to that and learn from that. I know there's paid services out there, which the right ones are great. I even have paid services, right? But there's a lot of good information within that. If you don't use it and don't apply it, then it's useless, man. And so for someone like me that's been trading, for a good amount of time, 6-7 years, I guess relatively speaking, I'm still learning, which you're always going to continually learn. You're always going to want to apply the information, but that's that trade there. VTGN, I've tried this a few times at the 8 level. Reason being is because of the 200 MA, the VWAP. And so I tried it yet again yesterday. and it just can't get going, right? And I tried it here. I talked about it on the trade review, in which I thought 830s was gonna hold up. It didn't. It failed. I ended up taking like $150 loss on the beginning, keeping shares small. It spikes again, and after hours comes back down, and then in the morning time, again I try to take this trade, but it's just not going right. And so I end up taking like a $30 loss to the long side, thinking like this was going to be the spike, or this was going to end up happening right here in 860s, where it's just holding up, but it doesn't. And then I end up shorting it down here, and that was more of a frustration FOMO trade. I get out of it. I scalp it for like, $4 or $5, and like Ellis, what are you doing? Just wait. And then lo and behold, it spikes again. And this is the beauty of being patient and just letting it hit levels. And if it doesn't hit levels, then you don't touch it. You don't mess with it, right? And so it's spiking again, and all I could think about was the short, just because of 2 times that I was defeated on the long. But seeing this spike right here, and then once it breaks through, like I should have taken this long, because I knew the resistance was up here in the nines and the 860s, because I saw it resist. I saw it not work out for me, and so I don't. But then again, taking that information, I end up shorting it right at 853 into this candle right here, um, and then I just let it play out, and so it starts to show agreement off the 5 minute candle here. So now I have my risk reward. And like I said, it falls down from here. And so if it breaks back to the upside and this candle goes green, I'm out, right? Well, it doesn't. It tries a couple of different times and it doesn't. And I end up covering right in the low eights and the teens, right in here. But I could have held it, just because of how many times it failed. But it's something new that I'm trying, some back testing, and so it was only 200 shares, but it was a decent win. It was a decent win for me, and that's what I've been doing a lot of, the back testing, but slowly but surely just adding up these gains. TTOO, this was a frustrating stock. It was very, very frustrating, to say the least. I've tried this a couple of times long. Again, from the previous trade reviews you're talking about, I've had the levels. I thought it was going to do what I thought it was going to do, and it did. But I just was trading in and out with no confidence. And then to the short side is where I benefited. And so I told myself, don't trade this unless you're near your computer. But I saw the levels, and I was comfortable this time, right? Because I knew what I was looking at. And so I did trade it initially using my Cobra mobile with the level 2 and trade review, excuse me. I was able to get the information, and I took an initial short at the 36 level, a little bit low for where I wanted to be, but then it ended up spiking me out, and so it got here, came back, and then it spiked up. But then I saw these levels, and I'm like, okay, for this to be the 40s, I remember shorting it at 41.40. That's a whole number. This thing has really taken a lot of shares to push this up. Like, this may be the end of this thing. And just looking at the chart, it looks very, very bearish, as far as the resistance and everything else goes. And so I got short again at 37.2, and it just went from there. And it just kept going and kept going. And then we got the break midday, which is great. Expected the bounce to 35. It fought and fought and fought, but then the bounce failed. And this is where I made the mistake. I got happy-go-lucky, thought this was over, like, great, it's going to continually go. And I've held so long, right? And this is where we have to literally lock in as traders, and I lost focus. This thing panics, and I see it. It panics all the way down to the 23 level. And I was more enamored by telling the chat room and just talking through it with the ego and the confidence of, like, this is destroyed, versus like locking in profits, right? And so I don't lock in any of this, and look what happens. It bounces ridiculously back to the 30s, and it's still there. And so I'm thinking, again, it was first red day yesterday. It held, it bounced around and chopped in after hours, but I think there's going to be some continuation follow through, maybe a smaller panic. We get back down here to the 27s. That's what I'm expecting. I don't expect the 23s, but man, just silly lack of professionalism when it came to what I was doing and how I should have did it. But you live and you learn. I'm aware of it, and you apply the information for the next trade. KCSP, I took this trade thinking that there's opportunity once it got over the 140s. I don't know exactly where it's going to go or like how it's going to happen, but I'm just trying to play the stock for what it is, right? And so I'm probably going to get out of this pre-market right now. But it just looks like I thought that it was holding the VWAP, and 140 used to be a good level of support. So it was more like a YOLO trade. I don't want to sit here and take big losses, but I was patient when it dipped into here, knowing that that 140 in the day was gonna scoop it back up, um, like 4,000 shares. And so beyond that, those are the swings that I'm talking about. And so, oh yeah, I'm sorry, TUP. So TUP has been trading to the downside, and it was SSR yesterday, and there's a couple red days in a row, but when a stock goes SSR can't bounce and it's just hanging near the lower day, there's a good chance that it's going to continue on. So I'm actually short this in the 384 area, and I'm thinking that we get a nice panic back down to the threes, but I got to be careful because down here, right here in this area, this is where this stock bounced strong with that debt, news of restructure and everything. So I don't know if they can pull another rabbit out of that hat, prior to the market open, but we'll see. But I think that this is it's done for, and like everything else, man, I'll just continually manage. So hopefully I explained everything okay. Hopefully you guys are taking advantage of this information that's being given out, being able to leverage it, as that's what we all should be doing, is sharing trader thoughts and coming together and evolving. Um, Reach out and have any questions, you can ask me. Let's continue to get better.